check out these super sexy Dragon Eye dice that I got sent from onlycrits.com. If you want some dice like these, click the link below in the description or go to onlycrits.com/lostlore for a 10% discount. Use Lost Lore at checkout. This video is not for those with short attention spans. I've been thinking about something for a while, and it's actually kept me up tonight, and that's why I'm in here at 1 o'clock in the morning rather than in bed. The devolution of fantasy, or Dungeons and Devolution, this idea that we've lost something important, that the fantasy genre has devolved into a grey, gooey slop substance that is now fed forcefully down the throats of a mass market audience, rather than being something that is a well crafted and well thought out story, game, or experience. I think this is most exemplified in the orc, a monster most foul, something to be slew, something that should be slaughtered when seen, Goblin Slayer style. And I think this is most exemplified in the Dungeons and Dragons 2024 orc. This thing. What is this? What's with the modern haircut and the biker jackets and boots? And is that an axe? Look at these other orcs. Isn't this better? Look at first edition's orc, the pig snout orc. What happened? And it's not just the orcs in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I'm not a horde guy myself, but in World of Warcraft, this is what you started with, and this is what you've got. And yes, I'm aware that second one is something to do with a fan art competition, but it speaks to a general attitude to the genre that I think has become more pervasive. In this dumbing down, this needing to make things cute and cuddly. I actually got into something of a discussion with Rob Kuntz, one of the original creators of Dungeons and Dragons, a few days ago over on the X Machine, and he was saying that the design of new fantasy media is somewhat cute and cuddly. And I came back at him and I said that, the old style of Dungeons and Dragons media and fantasy media has a bit of a cutesy aesthetic to it. I remember uni from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. And I don't think it's quite the right to say that the design element is what's gone wrong here. I think there is a deeper root to the issue that we're experiencing. And that root, in my opinion, is no one reads anymore. We have a fantastic library of fantastical literature, and before that, the mythology of the entirety of the human species stretching back into the midst of time that no one bothers to look at anymore because we forgot that it exists in favor of our new grey, sloppy superhero films, which I absolutely and utterly despise. What we have found ourselves with is a forgetfulness of Appendix N, specifically in the case of Dungeons and Dragons, the wellspring from which the genre has formed. This includes people like Michael Moorcock's work, and before him you have the grandfathers of the genre, Tolkien and Howard, both of whom were steeped in mythology. In the case of Mr. Howard, I was not so well versed until recently, and so I reached out to a friend on X by the name of That Damnedest Bastard. You should give him a follow, good guy. And he is much more steeped in Conan the Barbarian than I, and he explained to me that Howard was a bit of a mythology aficionado, and that's why you have the Atlantean thumbprints in Conan. And of course, we all know that Tolkien, who I'm far more familiar with, wanted to create a mythology for the English people as he saw it as a bit of a travesty that the Normans had done away with it upon their invasion in 1066. These two men had a good understanding of the way in which humanity has told stories about itself, and specific peoples within that human story have told stories about themselves throughout history. When you understand that you are not an atomized creator, as a dungeon master, as a writer, as a screenwriter, as a producer, or what have you, when you understand that fantasy is a continuing tradition and that you are at the breaker wave of a flowing river heading towards the sea, that you try and take yourself more seriously as a writer or creator. When you create these stories, you tend to put less of this millennial tat in, the snarky, witty remarks. The Whedonization takes a back seat, so to speak. You tend to then think more deeply about what you are expressing with these stories. A magic sword can just be a magic sword, or it could be Stormbringer, which in and of itself harkens all the way back to Tearfinger, the magical sword of a Germanic chieftain, which is in and of itself the roots of Excalibur, which then gets you thinking about knights and virtue and the Fae and ladies of the lake, which could then make you think about the Grail Knights of Warhammer. And you can see how all of these things are a upwelling of human storytelling, repackaged and reformatted for entertainment, escapism, and exploration for a modern audience. I think this is something that we have lost and something we desperately need to get back. There are, I believe, very few examples of modern creators today which are that breaker wave of tradition. In Catholic thought, tradition is something that is handed down from the apostles to the church fathers and then disseminates down through the church through the millennia. This is not something that is supposed to be stagnant, however. It is an outgrowth of their faith. They grow and create grand cathedrals and statues and stained glass windows and new rituals with which to worship their God. Think about the fantasy tradition like that. We are not here to be stagnant in our reinterpretation and reimagining of Tearfinger, for instance, as Stormbringer or as Narsil or Andoril. No, we are here then to make our own take on the magic sword. My one would be Shimmer, the sword that shattered the world, and the battle of D'Artagnan's will against its will to force his identity out and over the identities of the many shattered realms that Shimmer attempts to create. You see how much more deeply you think about these things when you have this solid root, this upwelling of tradition informing the way in which you write. I think, I can't remember the person who this quotation comes from, but you should not trust an author that does not read. And likewise, you should not trust fantasy that is not coming from the tradition of fantasy and mythology that has brought us such fantastic epics as The Lord of the Rings and of Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion series and of Howard's Conan the Barbarian. These are the things that set this genre apart. It is not here to explore the dystopian weirdness of science fiction. It is here to explore the human condition and the way we express ourselves through mythology. And it makes a damn good escapist story to read before bed. Yeah, I think that's about what I wanted to get off my chest this evening. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think. And if you got this far, say the word Mac in the replies to show me that your attention span is better than the average 2.5 to 3 minutes, that most of these internet fools can't even manage that. Goodbye.